I've worked with many owners reps before, and they all operate in a different way. And what I found very refreshing in working with Advocate was it was very professional, it was very team-oriented, very collaborative, and I think it brought a feeling of safety to everybody. Sometimes it's great to get that person that's not the architect, not the designer, not the client, that can stand outside of that bubble and look at what's really going on and say, I know this is what they want, this is what it's gonna cost, how do we get them there? And I think that's what I really enjoyed about working with Advocate is you've got that additional role player that's standing outside that bubble that can assess things non-emotionally.
Working with the Advocate team has actually made me realize that they are not just an advocate for the client. They're really an advocate for everybody on the team. And that's why the project shines more than it might have if they weren't there educating the entire team on the options. So if we have a client that really feels strongly about hitting a certain budget number, Advocate's team is really there to help us explore the options on how we don't have to sacrifice necessarily the overall intent of the project and still get to the same outcome. Having the Advocate team available to us has really allowed many of our projects to excel to a different place than they would have quicker. And with a more positive experience for the client. So having someone really be on everyone's team in the process, in bringing solutions, and explaining perhaps where certain cuts of cost weren't the right solution because it really would have sacrificed the project.
My experience working with the Advocate, there's a giftedness in assembling a team, understanding your client's chemistry and how they can relate to other, be it building professionals, design professionals, and having the insight, number one, to understand who the design community would align with best with your client. But ultimately, it's a game of stewardship and caring for the client and getting to know them, knowing what's best for them, and then having the folks on your team that can read the proper cues and also communicate with a multitude of different folks. You got to communicate with architects, builders, engineers, interior designers. It's complicated, it's overwhelming, and I think it's interesting for those that may or may not have been involved with the build process prior to have that sounding board and have an advocate. As far as an overall project involvement, the Advocate to this point has been there for all the critical phases, and all along I would say when my owners show up for a meeting, I feel like they've been prepped and I feel like they're educated. Aside of expectations, the flip side of that is educating people, because if you've never done it, how would you know? There's things you know, there's things you don't know, and there's things you don't know that you didn't know. And I think having the insight to fill those blanks in advance, it really assists us from an architecture standpoint, because if people walk in slightly informed, that's better than non-informed. If they walk in completely informed, whatever level of communication is there, it helps. And being along as a consistent sort of steward through the whole process, it just helps with consistency and communication.
One of the first things I noticed working with the Advocate team was the ability for them to help put the entire team together when it came to designers, builders. I was able to get a better understanding of what their process was and how they helped the client, as well as work with all the different individual team members. A lot of times the hardest thing for a client to do if they've never done a new build or remodel is understand the entire process. Advocate was incredible when it came to working with the client and helping them understand all the different team members and what their process was as well. One of the biggest decisions a family can make is designing and building a luxury home. Advocate has been extremely important for me to recommend to a lot of my clients because they are very essential in the pieces of design, team members, and getting the project done to where the client wants it to be.
I was introduced to Advocate on a project that we needed to turn around that was not going in the best direction and needed a little help saving, bringing in a new team. And from there, I also have been working on a large-scale remodel with Advocate. But the one thing that I've found that has been so helpful on coming into a project with Advocate is the building of the team. And I work on the interior side, which is very personal. People's homes and the way they live sometimes can get overlooked when it comes to building a luxury home. And so having Advocate working with the whole process, working with the whole team, and building each part specifically for that client has been an absolute dream that I don't want to live without on any project. In any project, maintaining the creative vision, the budget, and the timeline are key factors, and Advocate was extremely helpful in working through that process with us.
The advantage that I've really experienced in working with the Advocate team is having someone that's not just representing the owner and the client, but also the rest of the team and how those problems are solved. That could be related to scheduling and realistic expectations of what delays and timing look like, and helping the client realize their ownership in the pace of decision making. And I think just having someone that is there for the client to really hold their hand, make them feel comfortable, and reinforce what the team is giving them is realistic or is within what should be expected. Working with the Advocate team members has been really diverse, and depending on who we're working with and what stage the project's in. So it's really nice to have that type of a team where we can have support for the bidding process differently than we can have through trying times of problem solving, because that creates a different set of emotions for the client.
I think it's really great to have someone like the Advocate team on board, especially when you're building a new house, and just let them kind of quarterback the whole process for the client. Especially on a high-end luxury home, a lot of the homes we're doing are so complicated. They're not just on flat sites. There's ravines, there's cliffs, there's design reviews, there's hillside review. It's a long, hard process. And a lot of times when I'll say something, I say, well, we got to do hillside review, it's this, this, this. Clients look at me, what? But then I've got the Advocate team there who goes, no, he's right, we've been through it, it's exactly what happened. So it's just great to have that added support as an architect. I know it's helping the client, but it's also helping us tremendously. So I really encourage architects to reach out to Advocate, and a lot of times, especially with difficult clients, I think it's great to have someone like the Advocate team on board.